what is so exciting about the Incredibly Curious journey is we are having a different conversation. Now, I've sat in a number of industry meetings and in one-on-one meetings where people have expressed that they want to do something different. They cannot just sit there and let regulations rule their life. So we're starting to get the sense that the industry is looking for an outlet to come together to do something good for the industry. And the industry is always paranoid about this thing called anti-competitiveness, but there's nothing anti-competitive about this. We want the industry to come together to do stuff that is right. So it's not just that it's an intellectual exercise and it's fun to interview people and we'll get some ideas, but we think this is possibly the way we can now help the industry move to where they want to go to, and we want to be part of that.
What you're starting to see fundamentally in this early part of the 21st century is that the templates of business that have stood firm for the past 40, 50 years, their foundations are being washed away and they're finding themselves more and more prone to be obsolete or otherwise eating the dust of their competitors.
We live in a world of exponential change. It's going to change business models tremendously. If we don't change it ourselves, somebody else will change it.
People's foundations are shaken everywhere, and because of that unsettled nature of the world, people find it difficult to find direction.
Everyone knows what they should be doing, but they don't know necessarily how to do it.
Disruptive. That defines the era we live in.
Uncertainty is on the rise. With the increase in complexity in the world, whether it's in weather patterns or the frequency of contact or the unpredictability of vast amounts of people being connected to new devices that previously weren't in contact with each other before, it's that change is happening.
To some degree, you could extrapolate the past into the future to give you some kind of guidance of the direction that the world can develop into. But that has changed in the nature of the uncertainty, where past conventions don't hold any clues of the direction that the future might develop.
The things that we hold as assumptions in our business of the past are not really as valid going forward.
I think we've gotten used to the certain way things work, but that's all gone. All the traditional business models have disappeared. Everything is new, and it's about defining or writing your own future.
Yeah, the topic of the recent World Economic Forum debate at Davos was the fourth industrial revolution. And that differentiates itself from the third industrial revolution, which is really computers and it's business starting to use computers in the 1960s and so forth. But from the year 2000 onwards, we've just seen rapid changes in a variety of fields. In the physical space, like driverless cars, in the digital space, like the Internet of Things, and also in the biological space, like, for example, personalized medicine. And what's happening, these three different worlds are starting to converge. And it's all about disruptive changes in technology in all these spheres. And this world differentiates itself completely from the previous era where we lived in.
I guess the key uncertainty is, it's certainly in our mind, and I think it's in our clients' minds because we've had these discussions. Is there any chance that someone is going to come and take us out completely and reinvent this industry that we have developed for the last 100 or 200 years?
I think insurance companies in their traditional form are very likely to be under tremendous threat of survival. As uncertainty increases, as complexity increases, the need to be somehow protected against the dramatic lack of predictability of the future will not go away. It will, in fact, dramatically increase.
One of the signs that an industry is ripe for disruption is when the industry is built around aspects of it that don't serve the customer need. And I think the challenge with the insurance sector currently is that it's built more around the advisors than it is the users.
I've spent 20 years working in insurance. I recently purchased an insurance policy from a South African company, and their material is completely unintelligible. Unintelligible.
Your interaction space is horrible. It's not the purchase it's the process that's horrible.
The insurance process currently feels scary and risky. It feels like it's going to be time consuming, it feels like it's going to be expensive, and it feels like with all of the complexity that even though I don't know quite how, I feel like I might not be getting the best deal.
The industry has begun to compete on complexity. So our products are on some level commoditized, and we therefore differentiate through complexity, and all that does is obfuscate.
Regulation has driven a sameness into the life insurance industry that didn't exist there before. You used to be able to say, if I go here, I'm more likely to get paid out than if I go there. That's no longer true.
If you have such a lot of regulatory proposals out there, then it creates uncertainty. So industry players would be reluctant to commit to a new path without knowing this path is sustainable. And I think it's because of that uncertainty that the industry has become a little bit stuck in a rut.
In terms of regulation and legislation, I think we're at a very, very confused juncture at the moment. So we're trying to kind of just correct and Tipp-Ex out things in the old rule book while we're rewriting a new rule book, and that is just going to be a transient thing. And I think that's, in the long run, is almost going to be a waste of time.
There is a concern that at the end of the day we'll find global players getting into the market but not needing to deal with the regulatory requirements of the market. And as soon as that happens, they will by definition be more competitive.
We mustn't be in a situation where we've got the regulator telling us what we need to do. We must rather be in a position where, as an industry, we say these are the current problems that we are facing. Get together with both the industry and get together with the regulator and actually find solutions to those problems.
A strong regulator plays a very important role to keep the ecosystem healthy. At the same time, we must make sure that the regulatory pace of keeping regulations actual keeps up with the pace of technological change, which is difficult to do because technology is changing in real time.
Bitcoin's an interesting concept, and that's the sort of thing that could change the world totally.
And if you look at how the technology companies have emerged over the last 20 years, they've had to deal with exactly the same challenge. They've moved people from a place of fear towards a place of confidence in technology through simplicity of interfaces. And that don't intimidate me with massive, scary forms and complexities that make me feel stupider than I actually am.
My biggest probably complaint about the market is sort of that the status quo always seems like the better option than the other option, whatever that may be. So there might be 5 different innovative ways you could go, but the status quo always outnumbers each of those.
My sense is that insurance companies of the future may very well not be started by actuaries. They'll be started by people who have a sense of what the need in the common good is.
I think we are now entering a new phase where it's not the intermediary and it's not the product actuary that's important. It's the customer that is now at the center.
I think we are faced with a number of challenges that most insurers are not actually geared to handle at this point in time, purely because I think the customer is a disruptor. We love using words like customer-centric, and we're really not.
Millennials are no longer interested in a one-size-fits-all approach. They want something that's bespoke to them and something that they need.
We tend to focus on millennials as being a different set of customers, but I think customers themselves are changing. So even your older customers who've been more established in the insurance industry, their needs and wants are also changing. So they're as fickle when it comes to moving between service providers as a millennial would be.
What the customer is demanding is very different to what we provided in the past. They are also very demanding on how they want to interact and engage with the industry.
Consumers empowering themselves and starting to think, well, I can do this myself, or I can get an app to actually do what you used to do with your big systems, is going to disrupt our industry. People are not just being sold to anymore, they are actually empowering themselves and going out and buy. And I think that trend will just continue.
We've got world-class technology that lives in our pockets. The president can't get a better iPhone than I can. And you've got access to the very latest in customer interface design. That sets the bar at a particular level, and then we encounter our insurance call center or our insurance forms. And it's incredibly frustrating. And yes, that used to be good enough 10 years ago, but guess what? My expectations have changed.
If you want to know something, you Google it. With that, the ability to access information easily, access whatever you need with speed, has led to a more impatient society.
So the days of having an RA for 40 years and continue to pay your premiums every month, I think those are behind us.
The way people work is going to be fundamentally different. They're going to be switching jobs far more frequently than what happened in the past. There's going to be periods of time where they don't have an income, and they're going to want far more flexibility from a premium payments point of view. And I think our products are going to have to change and allow and cater for that.
And we need to have far more dynamic products and far more touch points with our customers to keep them interested.
Do not impose your business model on me, because that's the only way industry works. Because if Google arrives and does insurance differently, but actually does it a lot more like I intuitively expect it to be, then that's the model I will use.
So there's this model that people have become used to, which is on demand. I can turn it on and I can turn it off. I don't want to get into long-term contracts. And I think that could be very relevant for insurance as well.
When you start to understand people's lives, you can actually create products that are actually quite inspired by how they live their lives. One of the big trends at Interbrand we shared with the market last year was the idea of a ecosystem, that we've evolved from being an ecosystem where I exist within a space where there's things for me to touch and feel, to everything must come to me because I've got a phone, I've got a computer. So if brands start to live closer to me and fit into how I live my life every single day, I notice you more, because there's so much choice in the world that for you to shout above everybody else, proximity and intimacy becomes a key driver. What I've seen with insurance companies is that they haven't evolved when it comes to how they distribute their products, and also how they communicate with customers. The ecosystem, yes, as much as it's about me, but what exists in my space is influenced by something or someone. And I think we see that with popular culture, that a lot of people are driven by popular culture, whether what I wear, how I behave, how I want to look, and I bring all these things into my space for me to have this identity. And I guess understanding the spheres of influence is also important.
The way that millennials think of community, of course, is intermediated by technology. So they have a community through Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is that really constitutes an amazing array of different kinds of people that their grandparents may never have conceived of belonging to their community.
As insurance companies have grown up, they have effectively become managers of the pool. In practice and in theory, still on behalf of the us, but the us has been lost. And I think the friend insurance space, that concept of mutuality, brings back home and says, this is a group of people, these are people you know, and it's our money that's in this pool. And therefore, there's no adversarial discussion. There's a discussion about whether this pool should give you some of our money because you have a need and it's a genuine need. And large insurance companies should be worried about that, because one of the things, we call it social media. It is a connecting communication platform, generally open architecture and generally pretty much globally available. Anyone with a reasonable knowledge of the workings of insurance and some kind of a cash flow engine can effectively create an insurance company. They don't need licensing, so they won't be worried about RDR, they won't be worried about phase, they won't be worried about SAM. Because it'll actually just be a bunch of people together pooling their money.
We're now seeing a kind of blurring, what the millennials may refer to as a mashup of insurance products, which provide, I think, a fascinating opportunity for insurance companies to be innovative. Your biggest threat to your industry doesn't come from within that industry. So you have to watch what is happening cross industry in order to sort of gauge what's going to hit. And the music industry shows us that you get hit repeatedly by disruption.
In the next 10 years, we could have driverless cars on the road. It obviously is going to change the whole dynamic of motor car accidents and how you claim. But it may bring a whole new paradigm of liability insurance into the fray.
We've all read about Google's self-driving cars. That's a fantastic idea. What would happen if somebody hacked into a car and stole it, or worse still, had a malicious view and drove it off a cliff with its continuously screaming occupant inside, and then reset the software just at the moment it was departing the surface of the Earth, such that when the thing was unpacked and unpicked later, there was nothing obvious except, oh, there must have been a malfunction.
So today, if you are involved in a car accident, you don't immediately think about the manufacturer. But in a driverless car environment, you can see that. 3D printers are going to bring down the production cost for many things. In a strange way, it may take away insurable interest for insurers, because now it's cheaper, it's easier to get certain information or certain products, and therefore maybe you wouldn't want to insure them.
I think there's a very exciting future for 3D printing. As new materials are developed, we will be able to print different types of scaffolds. These scaffolds can then be used to seed with stem cells and to grow organs for patients. They have already started in the United States of America, where they printed a windpipe for a small girl. The more patients we treat, you will get complications, and there will be a huge development in liability insurance.
Medical technologies are transforming insurance in so many ways. And I think that the role of the insurer is not just to insure and provide benefits to the consumer who might be sick and who might have health problems, but also to incentivize the medical practitioner who innovates to create new efficiencies for the patient.
When we talk about uncertainty in the insurance risks, there's risks emerging that we're not even sure what they are.
You've got this situation currently that insurance companies operate in a national identity. And I think this is happening worldwide with anything that's digital, is that national identity becomes rather vague. What will happen with insurance is that you should be able to deliver an insurance solution anywhere in the world, and somebody based in China could be able to buy that access from an insurance company. It doesn't matter where they are.
There are some experiments with the blockchain creating what have been called decentralized autonomous organizations. Some of the mainstream institutions, banking institutions, financial and insurance institutions, are really embracing these technologies. There's been a huge kind of reawakening and rethinking where quite smart people have suddenly thought, well, what is money? Realizing that actually it's not necessarily what we thought it was, and what it really is information. It's transfers of information. So how I transfer that information, whether it's a note that I write IOU on, and that has currency, or it's a Bitcoin or any other form of currency, that's what money is. But what about information that goes deeper than that, and that's much richer than that? What about information about me? So personal information is an extremely valuable asset.
We are always on, as humans, as citizens, as people. We are being continuously tracked, and we are generating a continuous stream of data. No matter what you do, where you go, you are leaving a footprint. In the hands of some pretty basic statisticians, the quantum of data we as humans are generating can become very predictively powerful. But that idea that we are being observed, I think to me is the defining thing at the moment.
Protection of Personal Information Act in South Africa, the General Data Protection rules in the European Union, and many more that are now suddenly becoming important, are creating a new paradigm around this, around who owns and controls the information. So privacy is really just about ownership and control. Individuals can reclaim our personal information and then make it useful for ourselves.
It is true big data inside of insurance organizations, and they don't tap into it at all. So a lot of value on the table there. Then if you look at Internet of Things, the number of wearable devices, the data that generates, where we get wireless homes that's going to start generating data around the home, around driverless cars, that's shaking up the insurance industry, and I think it's starting to look at that.
So it's a completely new way of thinking about how our personal data gets used for our benefit, but also then to be able to innovate services that are more valuable to us and that are going to bring whole new business models for service providers.
We sit with customers that are becoming increasingly connected. So I think disruption will come from wearable devices. I'm quite surprised, so wearing one of those things, and I know what data this generates. I'm not sharing it with my insurer yet because they're not asking me to. But if I know that that's going to affect my premium, are happy to share that information, and I think that's being underestimated.
With the protections that are coming in place and the consumer demands around privacy and ownership of information, we're going to see a shift towards information being person-centric rather than being scattered across the cloud and held within institutions.
Big data is quite exciting. So big data and technology, and if you combine that with artificial intelligence and machine learning, opens a whole new world of possibilities. Suddenly we can interact with the amounts of data, we can grab it, we can interrogate it and analyze it, and then put machine learning on top of it. So what took humans 10 or 15 years to learn based on judgment, you can now program, feed the data, and a machine can learn that in a half an hour.
I think Morgan Stanley have just issued a report about robotics. And they reckon that 75% of the world's jobs are at risk of being robotized in the next 10 years.
If you look at, I think, the threat of robotics and the rise of the machines, everyone expected it to, and the most logical would have been your kind of manual, blue-collar worker type jobs. But what you're starting to see increasingly is that your lower level or even middle level white-collar jobs are completely at risk. Associated Press revealed that per quarter they already publish 3,000 articles every quarter that is being written by an algorithm.
So think of the possibilities if you think of doctors and what took a doctor 7 years to learn. If you put collective medical records, treatments, a machine can learn potentially in an hour what will be the best treatment for a specific disease, how to accurately diagnose that disease, and transform that into the insurance world.
So when you start looking at that and you start looking at empirically based industries, so auditing, insurance, even you go down to the law professions, legal secretaries, you go into healthcare, what's happening in your laboratories, all of that root work is going to be affected by machines, and we don't really think about that now, but it's a very real thing that's happening.
And it's disrupting all parts of the value chain, potentially the way products are delivered, the way clients are serviced, even the way you manage your data. And I wouldn't say there's one single technology. You really need to embrace technology generally and look at appropriate solutions for different parts of the value chain.
There's this huge evolutionary leap that is being taken, which is akin to the Big Bang.
We've got to bust out of the current paradigm of insurance-oriented thinking as the product is one thing and it needs to be experienced one way. And we've got to get down to the fundamental truth, which is, what are the problems that insurance solves for people? How does it make people feel safer? How does it mitigate against uncertainty? And given the full range of technologies that we have available, how might we match those new technologies to solving the fundamental truth that our industry promises in new and interesting ways?
There's a huge opportunity to develop new and clever ways to bring the products to the people in an efficient way, taking into account of the risk, but also taking into account their unique circumstances, and really kind of tailoring the solutions to what people have and what people want.
And I think designing a customer experience has to take into context the full 360 degree of a person. I think designing a customer experience needs to look at every touch point and how we actually optimize those touch points to be able to speak to a person.
You're immediately seen as being proactive, you're interacting with your customers, and it creates a perception that you are a modern organization, you are moving with the times. And then start embracing things like apps where people volunteer data. It ultimately boils down to finding an area which you can control, where you have the data and you can interact easily with it, and using that information to change how you interact with your customer and start creating what feels to the customer like quite a personal connection.
The interface for insurance largely currently is the advisor, and that's a good thing. The ultimate interface for people is other people. There is no better interface design than that. Are we thinking about disrupting insurance as getting rid of the advisor, or enabling the advisor to be smarter and to enable better meetings when they do happen with people?
And I think the concept of robo-advice in life insurance is going to grow. Life insurers need to embrace that.
Could we use technologies like drones to go and conduct assessments in places that would otherwise be too expensive to send an assessor? These are the things we need to be thinking about.
The fact that technology will allow servicing, interaction, claims, distribution of proceeds, all of that to be done on a more technologically enabled basis has got to be good for costs. I think it's much more of an opportunity and an uplifting opportunity for life insurance than anything else.
So you have this large portion of the population that are left outside of formal financial services and not benefiting from that. So I think step one is to include and find ways of including the higher portions of the population. And the metrics of that is not purely financial. The metrics of that should be number of users, number of people engaging with your products. And as these consumers start using financial services, they will then migrate up the value chain to higher return products.
As we move towards a more dynamic insurance context, there's a real opportunity for insurance brands to become relevant. But if our insurance company can prove to us that they're a life enablement partner, whether it's enabling me to live a healthier, longer life, whether it's enabling me to get better, smarter treatment, or to find people that will co-insure with me, there's never been a better time for insurance companies to start speaking like the world's most inspiring brands, whether that's Lego, whether that's Nike. It's a real opportunity for us to shift from being background brands to foreground brands.
We can do it in a variety of ways, and certainly I think it's very important that the way we see our role in society is very much integrated and aligned with the way we do business. It's not something on the side, some money that we give away and so forth, and that we over time through technology, or through innovations, give more people access to our solutions.
But there's this whole bunch of young people, previously uninsured people, that might be the early adopters for the more microinsurance type products, and you can start building a portfolio of your services with them, which could be very beneficial to both parties.
I think also, with our solutions being embedded in different other solutions over time, certainly it can be seen as more of a value-add solution and a more flexible solution. So, for example, through mobile technology, one can deliver a product far cheaper than a traditional channel.
So I'm hoping the insurance industry can come up with something revolutionary in this kind of context, maybe being the disruptor, especially in Africa.
So again, with the world shrinking, 3D printing, all of those great new technologies coming, you're likely to see that innovation land in Africa. The opportunity for Africa might be it might leapfrog a lot of developed economies where there is legacy in certain industries. That technology actually allows that industry to flourish in Africa because of the very reason that there is no legacy.
What's interesting, of course, is that in Africa, it's not necessarily smartphone technology, it's mobile technology. And one of the challenges is saying, well, in certain markets, things are really moving fast in terms of apps and those kind of developments. But there's a massive opportunity to use some more basic technology, but still as a tool for creating access and inclusion.
Africa's taken insurance and literally started from scratch, from a blank page. It seems like they have either did not know anything about the insurance industry or just have a complete healthy disregard for any legacy systems. And I think in South Africa, it's sometimes so easy to say, oh yeah, but we have these legacy systems and we'll never get the data. And I think that's going to be our downfall in terms of innovation, is that we're not hungry enough to go and design new products, get to untapped markets and make it work no matter what.
Starting to see the higher propensity for African millennials to return back to the continent to rebuild and to give back. It's very, very different from, say, possibly India and China, but in Africa you're starting to see that. So when in the next, say, by 2030 or so, I start seeing really, really interesting ways of doing things in Africa, and also specifically not 20th century developed world models.
Yes, we're doing amazing things in South Africa, but generally for the established insurance market. And I think what we can learn from Africa is how to go into that untapped market, how to leverage micro-insurance and almost bring insurance to literally anyone.
So one of the things with digital technologies is that we tend to overestimate the change that's going to happen in the very short term and underestimate the change that's going to happen in the very long term. But somewhere in between there is the sense that instead of aiming for an immediate change, we need to build a fitness for change. As an organization, we need to understand that innovation isn't something that we do, but it's a capability that we practice.
I can't see the insurance world being the same in the next 20 years. I just see something that's going to be a radical shift. The basics will remain. Let's not kid ourselves.
My biggest concern is that I can see trends taking place where the insurance companies are not interested in doing what needs to be done to be relevant in the future. And I think that's a real danger for us. I mean, we, in a sense, have to engage almost outside the industry because they could be our future customers. And I think that's one of the things that we have to do as a reinsurance space is that our customers today may not be our customers of the future.
And I think the winning solution in this new digital space is one that collaborates with different ecosystem players. So the pace of change and the way that consumers engages with different brands and different players in this digital ecosystem is so rapid that the approach that I think will work is to work together with other players in that ecosystem in a collaborative manner and ensure that in the end value creation to the end consumer is key.
What one must also understand is that capital is no longer a barrier. If you have a solid business case or a business model, one can crowdsource, funding, or you can go to Silicon Valley or New York or London, the areas where the fintech investments are massive, the potential capital. So capital is not the limitation, it's really to find the entrepreneurs and to put the right solutions together.
If they can think creatively around how they interface with the new world, build partnership with newer forward-thinking players, they can still be relevant in the new world in the next 50 years of insurance.
Traditionally, bigger insurance groups and bigger companies would want to find the solutions in-house, and do everything themselves. But the changes are just so rapid. I need to be open-minded to partner with these small entrepreneurial businesses as well that run their businesses from a garage, but they just have the latest technology and the latest disruptions. And it's not either or. It's really you need to do both.
The command and control management model is dead and won't work. It's simply too hard to predict for any one team or any one executive. The future is simply too uncertain. At the same time, the way we use technology and our architecture of our technology has to do two things. On the one hand, it must create incredible scale so that every new consumer we onboard is onboarded at a lower price point. And we really create an infrastructure that's scalable. At the same time, it must allow for modular customization on a local level so that the wrapper that we put around our product has local relevance and meets a local consumer need. If the infrastructure is not scalable but customized, then the price point will be too high. And if it's just a commodity, then it won't meet the consumer needs. So we really do need to do both.
What has Uber done, or Airbnb? They've created scale on a totally different level. So the biggest taxi company in the world don't own a single taxi. The biggest provider of accommodation, Airbnb, they don't own bricks and mortar. They just created an ecosystem through technology and got groups of people together and give them a great client experience and give them access to a solution, although they don't own the solution, and they get a platform fee. And I guess one need to think about whether that's possible in the insurance space.
Anybody looking from outside the insurance industry will look and say the people to partner with are the reinsurers because they have the capital. And if the person outside the market is able to bring access to the client and an understanding of the client, I think they will partner with reinsurers.
What might sound outrageous might well become a practical reality in a new world where you do business totally differently. And I think in this fourth industrial revolution environment, one needs to be very, very open-minded to tap into different skills and resources on a massive scale where you don't control and own everything, but where everyone's got the common purpose to solve certain problems for clients and to connect.
What is the future? Choice. The choices we make today, the quality of our decision making today is what will have the number one impact in terms of what the future is going to be like?
It's probably opportune now that this kind of indaba gets held quickly and without the competition issue being there. So it's in the interest of the industry, it's in the interest of reinsurers, it's in the interest of the regulator and the end customer to ensure that these conversations do take place. So there's no agenda here, but the agenda is let's begin a conversation.
I have the absolute luxury of understanding just how many clever people there are trying to solve problems in this industry. What I would like to do is to invite those people to collectively participate and learn from each other. And as a result of the collective participation and learning, to be encouraged and to feel a measure of bravery in going forward, and that they are not alone, there are others with them on this journey, and that overall we can be proud of trying to find answers for customers and for South Africans.
And you know what? We don't know what the answers are going to look like. If someone had the answer, it would be a solved problem. The big thing is to remain curious.